The atmosphere establishes contemporary Gothic, old money meets modern guilt, ancestral duty colliding with personal devastation. David's arrival mirrors the reluctant heir returns archetype, but inverted. He's come to destroy his legacy, not claim it. The sensory shift from cold isolation, rain, empty ESUV, his own numbness, to unexpected warmth, glowing windows, domestic life, a child's laughter, creates immediate tension and emotional conflict. The pacing begins as psychological suspense, with a ticking clock, accelerating through domestic thriller territory into high-stakes survival drama. The tone balances raw contemporary realism with the suffocating weight of legacy, a modern man in casual clothes haunted by centuries of obligation, where titles are anachronisms, but duty remains absolute. David Bick Hicks, 34, Duke of Greymont, finalize the sale and vanish into anonymous city life where no one knows his name or his failures. Paralyzing survivor's guilt and fear of responsibility, he believes everyone who depends on him ends up destroyed. His brother died in his arms, patients died under his care, his family legacy crumbled during his absence. The sale David thought was pending has already been finalized through fraudulent documents. Georgina and Thomas have been living in a house that's been legally sold from under them, and everyone involved. The buyers take possession in 12 hours. If David signs the final transfer, which he came prepared to do, Georgina and Thomas are immediately evicted into winter with nowhere to go. If he fights it, he must confront the corrupt network of solicitors and property developers who've been profiting from his 6-year absence and face the trauma-soaked rooms he swore never to enter again. Inciting incident: discovering Georgina and Thomas in his empty house, then learning the sale has been completed through forged documents, his signature, her lease, all fabricated by the same solicitor, now demanding he sign the final papers. A midnight medical crisis where Thomas's life hangs in the balance, the same respiratory emergency that killed David's brother. While the buyers arrive early with police to enforce the eviction, David must simultaneously save the boy and defend his home, choosing between the safety of running away and the terror of staying to fight. David exposes the property fraud conspiracy, voids the illegal sale, and asks Georgina and Thomas to stay, not as tenants, but as the family that brings Greymont back to life. He reclaims not just his house, but his identity as someone capable of protecting rather than destroying.
David found her in the library, elbow deep in his family's history. She stood on the rolling ladder, dusting the upper shelves with a carefulness that made his chest ache. Books he hadn't touched in years, books his brother had loved. She handled them like they mattered. "Oh, thank God!" She climbed down, relief flooding her face. "You're finally here. I've left 3 messages with Mr. Pemberton about the east wing roof. There's water damage spreading to the ceiling, and the boiler sounds like it's dying. I patched what I could, but..." She stopped, tilting her head. "You are from the property management company, aren't you?" David's mouth went dry. She was younger than he'd expected, early 30s maybe, with dark hair escaping a loose bun and paint stains on her flannel shirt. She looked tired. She looked like she'd been fighting to keep this place standing. "I'm not from any company," he managed. Her smile dissolved. "Then who?" "David Hicks. I own Greymont." The color drained from her face, but she didn't flinch. Her shoulders squared instead, chin lifting in defiance. "That's impossible. I have a lease, legal and binding, signed by Pemberton and Associates 4 months ago, rent paid in full, security deposit, the works. I never authorized anyone to lease this property. And I never broke into someone's house and made myself at home." Her voice turned sharp as broken glass. "My name is Georgina Kane. My son is upstairs doing homework in what I was told is our home. I have documentation, receipts, emails, rights." David pulled out his phone, found the solicitor's email he'd been avoiding. The subject line screamed, "Urgent, final sale documents." He opened the attachment, turned the screen toward her. His signature stared back at them both. Authorization to sell, transfer of deed, all legally binding. "So do I," he said quietly. Georgina's eyes scanned the document. Her hand started to reach for the phone, then stopped mid-air, fingers curling into a fist. When she looked up, the defiance had fractured, exposing something underneath. Raw fear, the kind that came from having already lost everything once. "That's really your signature?" Her voice barely carried. "It's supposed to be. Mine's on the lease, my actual signature." The library felt suddenly airless. David could hear the old radiator ticking, rain against the windows, the house settling around them like it was holding its breath. From upstairs, footsteps, a child running, laughter that didn't know the world was collapsing. "We need to call someone," Georgina's voice steadied with effort. "Police, a lawyer, someone who can—" David's phone buzzed. Another text from the solicitor. "Buyer arrives 9 a.m. Prepare to vacate premises." The words hit like a bullet. "We need to call someone right now." Because they didn't have days to sort this out. They had less than 12 hours.
David's family lawyer answered on the fourth ring, voice thick with sleep. "It's 1 a.m, David. This better be. The estate. Someone's selling it out from under me." David paced the length of the library while Georgina sat rigid on the leather sofa, her lease clutched in white-knuckled hands. "I need you to tell me this is a mistake." The silence on the other end stretched too long. "Martin, tell me it's a mistake." "I've been trying to reach you for 6 months." The lawyer's voice shifted from sleepy to grave. "Ever since the first irregularities appeared. David, someone's been bleeding the estate dry since you left, systematically. The north pasture sold 2 years ago, the timber rights last spring, piece by piece, all with documents bearing your signature." David's legs nearly gave out. "I never signed anything." "I know. I suspected forgery, but without your cooperation I couldn't prove it. You wouldn't return my calls, wouldn't come back, wouldn't—" Martin exhaled sharply. "How bad is it? What are they taking now?" "Everything. The house. The buyers arrive at 9 a.m. 9, Christ, David, that's 8 hours from now." Georgina stood abruptly, her voice cutting through. "Who's the solicitor? Who sent us both here?" David put the phone on speaker. "Martin, who handled the sale?" "Pemberton and Associates, Edward Pemberton specifically, but when I tried to contact him yesterday about the transfer—" "He's gone, isn't he?" Georgina's voice was hollow. "That's what they do. They set the trap, collect their fee, and disappear before it springs." "How did you know?" Martin asked. "Because I've been looking for him for 3 weeks. Every number disconnected, the office address is an empty shopfront." She looked at David, and he saw his own dawning horror reflected in her eyes. "He's not coming back. Neither is our money." David's mind raced. "Martin, can you stop the sale?" "At 1 a.m., with an exchange happening in 8 hours?" The lawyer's voice cracked with frustration. "I can file an emergency injunction, but I'd need evidence of fraud. I'd need to reach a judge who'll take a call at this hour. David, I need time we don't have. Try anyway. Even if I succeed, even if I can delay the exchange, the buyers have a legal purchase agreement. If the sale's finalized, if Pemberton managed to forge all the right documents," Martin trailed off, "they have the right to take possession." Georgina stood and walked to the window, staring out at the rain-soaked grounds. "My son's asleep upstairs. He finally stopped having nightmares about our last place. He feels safe here." "How much time do we actually have?" asked David. "Best case, I stall them till noon. Worst case—" Martin paused. "They arrive at 9 with a court order and police escort. You'll have to leave, all of you." David looked at Georgina's reflection in the dark window, saw her shoulders shake once, then still. "Get us till noon," he said. "And then what?" David had no answer. David stood outside the door for a full minute before he could make himself turn the handle. 6 years he'd avoided this room for 6 years, had planned to sell the entire estate without ever setting foot inside it again. But Georgina had gone to wake Thomas, to tell him they needed to pack, to prepare him for whatever nightmare the morning would bring, and she'd said the boy was sleeping in the east study, his brother's study. The door creaked open. David's breath caught. The room was alive. Where there had been darkness and death, there were glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. Comic book posters covered the walls, Spider-Man swinging between the built-in bookshelves, Batman brooding above the fireplace. A child's backpack slumped in the corner, one strap broken and repaired with duct tape. And on the desk, his brother's antique mahogany desk, lay a scattering of drawings. David moved closer, his chest tightening. The boy had been using the medical journals, the same anatomical texts David had studied, the same volumes his brother had been reading the night he collapsed. Thomas had covered the precise diagrams of the human respiratory system with crayon drawings of superheroes. Iron Man flying across a detailed illustration of the lungs, the Hulk bursting through a cross-section of the trachea. He doesn't know what they are. David spun. Georgina stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself. He just likes the pictures, she continued quietly. Thinks they're robot parts or alien anatomy. I kept meaning to move them, but he loves this room. Says it feels like a scientist's secret laboratory. David's hands were shaking. He shoved them in his pockets. This was my brother's study. He died here. The words came out flat, emotionless, easier that way. Respiratory failure. I was a third-year medical student. I tried to... His voice cracked. I couldn't save him. Georgina's face went pale. David, that desk, that's where he collapsed. I performed CPR on that floor for 19 minutes while we waited for the ambulance. He couldn't look at her, couldn't stop looking at the room that had haunted him for 6 years, now transformed into a child's sanctuary. Thomas has asthma, Georgina said abruptly. David's head snapped up. Severe asthma. He carries an inhaler everywhere. We left our last place because the mold was triggering attacks every week. She moved into the room, picked up one of Thomas's drawings. The doctor said he'll grow out of it. Most kids do, but until then... She didn't finish, didn't need to. David's hands were still shaking. He looked at the medical journals scattered across the desk, at the cheerful crayon drawings of superheroes flying across diagrams of airways and lungs, at the room where everything ended, where a boy now sleeps, breathing easily, dreaming of heroes who save people. We need to pack, Georgina whispered. David couldn't move, couldn't speak. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. The storm was coming. The lights died at 3 a.m. David was in the kitchen, making coffee neither of them would drink when the house plunged into darkness. Through the window, he watched the storm intensify, wind bending the old oaks nearly horizontal, rain coming down in violent sheets. Power's out across the whole valley. Georgina appeared with a flashlight, Thomas's inhaler clutched in her other hand. I checked my phone, no signal either. Landline? Dead. They stood in the dark kitchen, the flashlight beam casting long shadows across walls that had stood for 200 years. The house groaned around them, protesting the wind. We're trapped, David said. Story of my life. Georgina's laugh was bitter. She set the inhaler on the counter with shaking hands. You want to know why I took a lease on a crumbling estate in the middle of nowhere? Why I didn't question the price being too good to be true? David waited. My husband died 18 months ago. Car accident, they said. Lost control on a wet road. Her voice went flat, emotionless. But Marcus was a careful driver, obsessively careful, and his business partners, the men he'd been planning to testify against, they weren't careful at all. Lightning flashed, illuminating her face. She looked carved from stone. They think I have evidence, financial records, documents, something Marcus supposedly left me. They think I know where he hid the money they can't account for. She met David's eyes. "I don't. I never did. But they don't believe me." "So you ran." "I ran, changed towns 3 times in a year, burned through our savings. Then I saw Pemberton's listing, remote estate, immediate occupancy, references not required, perfect for someone who needed to disappear." Her voice cracked. "I thought I was being smart, thought I'd finally found somewhere they'd never look." David's blood turned cold. "Georgina!" She pressed her palms against the counter. "I gave Pemberton everything. My real name for the lease, my bank details, my previous addresses for the background check he said was just a formality. I gave him a map straight to us. You think he sold the information. I think he sold everything. Your house to the highest bidder, my location to whoever paid enough." She turned toward the window, watching the storm. Thunder cracked so loud the windows rattled. In the darkness upstairs, Thomas called out, a sleepy, frightened sound. "I'm coming, baby," Georgina called back, steadying her voice. She looked at David, and in the flashlight's glow, he saw what he'd missed before. This wasn't just fear of eviction. This was fear of something far worse. "The buyers arriving at 9, she whispered. "What if they're not here for the house?" David's phone buzzed, one bar of signal cutting through the storm. A text from Martin. "Can't reach Judge. No delay. I'm sorry." The flashlight flickered. The wolves were coming at dawn, and there was nowhere left to run. The sound woke David just before dawn, a wet, labored wheeze that turned his blood to ice. He was moving before his mind fully caught up, taking the stairs 2 at a time toward the east study. Georgina was already there, kneeling beside Thomas's bed, the inhaler pressed to the boy's lips. "Come on, baby. Breathe. Just breathe." But Thomas wasn't breathing, not properly. His chest heaved with the effort, each inhale a desperate, rattling gasp. His lips had a blue tinge in the grey pre-dawn light. David grabbed the doorframe to steady himself. "Not again. Please, God, not again." "How long?" His voice came out strangled. 5 minutes, maybe less." Georgina's hands trembled as she administered another dose. "The inhaler's not working. It's always worked before, but—" Thomas's eyes rolled back. His body went rigid. David's training kicked in before his trauma could stop him. He was across the room in 2 strides, fingers finding the boy's pulse. Weak, too fast. The child's airway was closing. "Call an ambulance." "No signal. I tried. David, I tried." "Then drive. Take my car. Get to the village and—" "The bridge is out." Georgina's voice broke. "I checked at first light. The storm washed it away. We're completely cut off." Thomas made a sound like drowning, like choking, like exactly what his brother had sounded like 6 years ago on this same floor, in this same room. David's hands started shaking. "Not again. I can't do this again." "David!" Georgina grabbed his arm, her grip desperate. "You're a doctor. You said you were a medical student. You have to—" "I'm not a doctor. I never finished." The words tore out of him. "I walked away after my brother died because my hands wouldn't stop shaking, because every time I tried to see a patient, all I could see was—" Thomas's breathing stopped. Just stopped. The silence was worse than the wheezing. Georgina screamed his name, but David was already moving, muscle memory overriding terror. He tilted Thomas's head back, checked the airway, completely blocked. Severe bronchospasm, maybe combined with mucus plugging. The inhaler was useless now. He needed to intubate or perform an emergency cricothyrotomy, the exact procedure he'd frozen on 6 years ago. His hand shook so badly he could barely feel Thomas's pulse. "David, please!" Georgina's voice came from very far away. "Please don't let him die." Thomas's lips were turning grey. David closed his eyes, saw his brother's face, felt the same paralysis creeping through his limbs, the same certainty that his hands would fail, that everyone he touched turned to ash.
Then he opened them and saw not his brother, but a 7-year-old boy who'd drawn superheroes over anatomy diagrams, who'd turned a room of death into a sanctuary, who deserved someone who wouldn't give up. David's hands steadied. "David, I need you to listen very carefully." His voice didn't shake. His hands didn't shake. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, David remembered who he used to be.
David's brother had kept his medical kit in the bottom drawer of the study desk, the same desk where Thomas had been drawing superheroes, the same desk David hadn't opened in 6 years. His hands didn't shake as he pulled it open. The leather bag was still there, covered in dust. David laid it on the floor beside Thomas's motionless body and unzipped it with steady fingers. Scalpel, tracheal tube, antiseptic, everything his brother had kept on hand for emergencies. Everything David had been too paralyzed to use when it mattered most. "What are you doing?" Georgina's voice was raw from screaming. "Cricothyrotomy, emergency airway." David's voice was calm, clinical, the voice of someone who knew exactly what needed to happen. "His throat's completely closed. I have to cut through the cricothyroid membrane, insert a tube directly into his trachea." "You have to cut into his throat?" "It's the only way he survives the next 3 minutes." Georgina made a sound like breaking glass, but nodded. "Tell me what to do." "Hold the flashlight steady. Don't move no matter what you see." David positioned Thomas's head, hyperextending the neck to expose the airway, found the landmarks by touch: thyroid cartilage, cricoid cartilage, the small membrane between them. His target was less than an inch wide. His brother's target had been the same. 6 years ago, David had held the scalpel over this same membrane, had known the theory perfectly, had frozen completely. His brother had died while David's hands shook too badly to make the cut. "David," Georgina's voice pulled him back. "Now! Do it now!" Thomas's lips were gray. His chest wasn't moving. David made the cut. The scalpel moved with perfect precision, horizontal incision through skin, quick dissection through the membrane, then the tube sliding home. David connected the manual ventilator bag and squeezed. Once, twice, 3 times. Thomas's chest rose, fell, rose again. The gray fled from his lips, his fingers twitched. A heartbeat later, his eyes fluttered open, confused and terrified, but alive. David kept ventilating, kept the rhythm steady, watching the boy's color return from deathly pale to pink to something approaching normal. His hands didn't shake, not once, not even when Thomas tried to reach for the tube in his throat and Georgina had to gently restrain him. "Shh, baby, don't touch. You're okay. You're breathing. Just let the medicine work." David didn't correct her. There was no medicine, just a tube and David's hands and the thing he'd been running from for 6 years. "How long does he need this?" Georgina asked. "Until the swelling goes down. Could be an hour, could be 6. David met her eyes. "I'll stay with him. I won't let go." Something shifted in Georgina's expression. She was looking at him now differently. Not as the reluctant duke who'd come to sign away his past, but as the doctor who'd just saved her son's life. "You did this before," she said quietly. "For your brother. You tried to—" "I failed." The word hung between them. "I couldn't do it. I froze." "But you didn't freeze now." No, he hadn't. His hands had remembered what his mind had tried to forget. Outside, the storm was weakening. The rain had softened to a steady drumbeat against the windows. Inside, Thomas breathed, and David held on. The headlights cut through the pre-dawn darkness like searchlights. David saw them from the study window, 2 black SUVs coming up the drive, moving slowly, deliberately. The storm had passed, leaving the grounds waterlogged and treacherous, but these vehicles navigated the flooded gravel like they'd done reconnaissance, like they knew exactly where they were going. "Georgina,"
His voice was low, urgent. "We have company." She was beside him in seconds, still holding Thomas's hand. The boy was breathing easier now, the tube doing its work, but he couldn't be moved, shouldn't be moved. Georgina looked out the window and went rigid. "No, no, it's too early. They're not supposed to be here until 9. You recognize them?" The lead vehicle, black Range Rover, tinted windows. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "That's Marcus's old business partner, Richard Vance." The SUVs stopped in front of the house. Doors opened. 4 men emerged from the first vehicle, expensive suits, the kind that cost more than most people's cars. From the second vehicle came 2 uniformed police officers. David's stomach dropped. They brought police. Of course they did. They always make it look legal. Georgina's hand tightened on his arm. "David, we have to run, right now. Take Thomas and—" "He can't be moved, not with that tube." "Then I'll carry him. We'll take your car, go out the back. The bridge is out. There's nowhere to go." A knock thundered through the house, authoritative, final. One of the suited men called out, his voice carrying through the heavy oak door. "This is Richard Vance, representing Vance Holdings. We have a legal purchase agreement for this property and a court order authorizing immediate possession. Open the door." David's mind raced. It was barely 6 a.m. The sale wasn't finalized until 9. Martin said they'd have at least noon. Unless the whole timeline had been a lie. Another knock, harder this time. "Mr. Hicks, we know you're inside. We also know you have unlawful occupants on the premises. The police are here to ensure a peaceful transition." Georgina pulled Thomas closer, her whole body shaking. "He knows my name. He knows we're here. David, Pemberton sold us both, the house and my location, in one transaction. We're not opening that door. They have police. They have a court order. They have—" "I don't care what they have." David moved away from the window, his mind clicking through options. "This is my house. My family's held it for 2 centuries. Some fraudulent solicitor and his accomplices don't get to just take it." "David, they'll break it down." "Let them try." The lead man's voice came again, smoother now, reasonable. "Mrs. Payne, Georgina, I know you're frightened. I know we mean you harm, but all we want is what Marcus promised us. Give us the documents and you can walk away, you and your son. No one needs to get hurt." Georgina's hand drained of color. "He's talking like this is a negotiation." "It's not," David said. "It's a threat." Thomas stirred, making a small sound around the tube. His eyes opened, confused and scared. The pounding started again, harder, more insistent. "Last chance, Mr. Hicks. Open the door or we come in." David looked at Georgina, at Thomas, at the room where he'd just saved a life instead of watching one end. He'd spent 6 years running from who he was. He was done running. "Call Martin. Tell him we need help now." He said he couldn't stop them. "Then tell him to try harder." Outside, something heavy hit the door. They were coming in.
David stood at the top of the grand staircase and remembered who his family was. Not the broken man who'd fled 6 years ago, not the failed doctor haunted by guilt, but 200 years of Hicks family history, dukes who'd defended this land through wars, plagues, and revolutions. His ancestors hadn't run, neither would he. The front door splintered on the 3rd hit. Wood cracked, the ancient lock giving way, and Richard Vance stepped into the entrance hall like he owned it. 3 men flanked him. The police officers hung back, uncertain. Vance looked up at David with a smile that was all teeth. "Mr. Hicks, so good to finally meet you." "It's your grace, actually." David's voice carried through the hall with an authority he'd forgotten he possessed. "David Hicks, 14th Duke of Greymont, and you're trespassing. We have a purchase agreement. You have a forgery." David descended the stairs slowly, deliberately.
documents bearing a signature I never provided, a sale I never authorized. Tell me, Mr. Vance, how much did you pay Pemberton to commit fraud? The courts will be very interested in your relationship with Edward Pemberton and your connection to Marcus Kane's death, and why you're using a property sale as cover to hunt his widow." Vance's smile flickered. "Careful, Your Grace. Accusations like that require evidence. Then let's find some." David pulled out his phone, pulled up a number he hadn't called in 8 years. His uncle, the High Court judge who'd stopped speaking to him after he abandoned medicine. The phone rang once, twice. "David," his uncle's voice was sharp with surprise. "Do you have any idea what time?" "I need a favor. Last one I'll ever ask." David kept his eyes on Vance. "I need an emergency injunction against a fraudulent property sale, and I need it now." "David, I can't just—" "Uncle James, please. There's a woman and child here. The men trying to take this house aren't buyers, they're hunters." His voice steadied. "I'm standing in the entrance hall where you taught me to fence, where grandfather held court, where every Duke of Greymont has made his stand. I'm asking you, not as your nephew, but as the current holder of a title you once told me meant something. Help me defend it." Silence stretched across the line. Then, "Stall them 20 minutes." David ended the call, looked at Vance. "You have 2 choices. Leave now, or explain to law enforcement why you broke into a duke's private residence while emergency proceedings are filed against your claim." "The police are already here." "County police," David said, "not equipped to handle aristocratic property disputes, but I know people who are." He pulled up another number, then another, calling in markers from connections he'd ignored for years, family friends in Parliament, lawyers who'd served his father. Every resource that came with a title he'd tried to erase. The Duke of Greymont wasn't just a name, it was weight, history, power he'd been too broken to wield. He wasn't broken anymore. One of the police officers stepped forward, uncertainty clear on his face. "Sir, if there's a legitimate dispute over ownership—" "There is," David said, "and it will be resolved through proper legal channels, not by breaking down doors at dawn." Vance's jaw tightened. "You're making a mistake." "No." David moved to block the staircase. "The mistake was thinking I'd abandoned this place, that I'd forgotten what it means to be responsible for it, for the people in it." Behind him, upstairs, Thomas was breathing, Georgina was watching, his house was standing. "Get out," David said quietly, "before I remember we have dungeons." Vance stared at him for a long moment, then turned and walked out. The Duke had reclaimed his throne.
By noon it was over. Martin arrived with police detectives, forensic accountants, and enough documentation to bury Pemberton and Vance both. The forged signatures were obvious under examination. The money trail led straight back to Marcus Kane's embezzled funds Vance had been laundering through property deals, using Pemberton as his broker. The solicitor was arrested at Heathrow, boarding a flight to the Caymans. Vance was taken from the estate in handcuffs, still insisting he'd done nothing wrong. The house was quiet again by the time the sun broke through the clouds. David found Georgina in Thomas's room, the east study that would always be both rooms now, always carry both memories. She was packing, methodically folding her son's clothes into a worn duffel bag while Thomas slept, the breathing tube finally removed, an oxygen mask resting gently over his face. "You don't have to leave," said David from the doorway. "Yes, I do." She didn't look up. "The lease was fake. I have no legal right to be here, and even if I did—" Her hand stilled on a small shirt covered in superhero logos. "I brought those men to your door, almost got Thomas killed, got you dragged back into a past you were trying to escape. You didn't bring them, Pemberton did. Same result.
She zipped the bag with finality. "We'll go to my sister's in Cardiff, figure things out from there. Thomas will be fine. Kids are resilient." "Georgina," she thanked you, for saving him, for standing up to Vance, for, her voice cracked, for everything. But we can't stay where we don't belong. David crossed the room and took the bag from her hands, set it down, pulled the folded sale documents from his jacket pocket, the legitimate ones, the ones that Martin had brought, the ones that would let him walk away from Greymont forever, and tore them in half. "What are you doing?" Georgina stared at the scattered pieces. "Choosing." David looked around the room, at the glow-in-the-dark stars, the superhero posters, the medical journals with crayon drawings, at the life that had been breathed back into a space he'd thought was dead. "This house has been empty for 6 years, cold, a mausoleum. Then you arrived, and there was bread baking, and a child laughing, and someone who actually gave a damn about the leaking roof." He met her eyes. "You brought it back to life. You reminded me what it was supposed to be. I'm a broke widow with a sick kid and men hunting me. You're someone who turned my brother's study into a place where a boy dreams about heroes." David's voice softened. "Stay, not as my tenant, not as someone I'm helping out of obligation. Stay as," he struggled for words, "as the person who reminds me what this house was built for. Family, not ghosts." Georgina's eyes filled. "I can't pay rent, can't contribute anything." "Then don't. Just stay. Help me figure out what we do with 14 bedrooms and a library full of books no one's reading. Help me remember how to be something other than broken. That's not a fair trade. It's the only one I'm offering." Thomas stirred, his eyes fluttering open behind the oxygen mask. "Mum." Georgina went to him immediately, smoothing his hair. "I'm here, baby." "Is this still our house?" She looked at David. He looked back at her, waiting. "Yeah, I think it is," she whispered finally. "Yeah, I think it is." Thomas smiled and closed his eyes again. The house settled around them, old wood creaking, radiators ticking to life, the sound of a place remembering how to be home. Outside, the sun broke fully through the clouds. Inside, the Duke stopped running, and Greymont Estate, for the first time in 6 years, had a heartbeat again.